So there's this common advice that goes something like if you want to be successful in your agency, you better pick a niche. You better pick the right business to go after, one that you can serve really well, you can focus in on, ignore all these distractions, and like that's the recipe for having a successful business. It's like they say the riches are in the niches or the riches are in the niches. But in my experience, being an agency owner since 2003, nearing 25 years in business, working 8 to 12 hours a year in my agency, runs largely without me. I can tell you from that time, niching down, that has not been true for me. Early on and throughout the years, I kind of thought maybe there'd be this point in time where I would figure it out. Like, okay, this is the type of business I want to go after. And I could finally just zero in on this one perfect client, this one perfect business that's abundant everywhere, that they know that I'm like the right guy to serve their business. But I'll tell you that that day never came. And it's funny because I saw lots of different competitors come in and out of the local space here over the years, some of which are still around, other ones which haven't lasted. And I remember there was this one particular agency that I learned that they went all in on self storage. And I remember thinking at the time, like, that's an interesting type of business to go after. And I kind of tried to like put myself in their shoes, thinking, like, why was it that they went after that? Like, maybe they had like a perfect client that got them into the business and that they started to like chase the opportunities that way. Um, and I started to think about like, what would it feel like to be an agency owner of self storage unit clients? And I started to get this kind of weird feeling in the pit of my stomach that like that did not sound fun to me. Like going to the self-storage conferences and reading the books and the thought leaders in that space. I was like, that doesn't sound interesting to me. And I thought and I hoped that for them that was exciting to them and that it was more than just chasing the money and chasing the opportunity. I kind of thought that maybe at some point there'd be some client for me that was like the obvious one that I was going to do a lot of. And I'll tell you what, actually, that has happened over the years. And we have built proficiencies in certain industries, but we've largely built our agency by owning our own backyard, by being one of the best, if not the best known agency in the area that when somebody asks for a recommendation, like people will tell us, like, we got your name from at least three people. They all said to call you, so we figured we better do that. And owning my own backyard has been the approach that I've taken. And I'll tell you, especially in the beginning stages of the business, it made it a lot easier for me to find the rooms of people that I could do business with. Generating relationships is the core of how we sell. And you can build relationships online and you can run ads and you can spend time in online communities and you can be in those online spaces. But one of the major and easiest places to build a relationship is by physically being in the rooms of the people who could buy from you. And I know for a lot of people that tends to be things like BNI, Business Networking International, or local networking groups and chambers of commerce and associations. And there are rooms of people that have your ideal client in it. And for me, it was about making it easy on myself and showing up in those places where I could literally shake the hand of the people that I could potentially do business with. And so this idea of niching down kind of weighed on me for a long time. I thought I was doing it wrong. And all the advice out there and all the experts and the gurus were saying, like, you got to do this. You got to like carve out your little piece of that. And I never did it. And I kind of beat myself up around that idea for a long time until I realized that there's actually way more than one way to carve out a niche. There's way more than one way to distinguish yourself in a marketplace. And I found that there's basically two ways. If you look at my agency today, there's basically two ways that we actually kind of stand out among all the sea of digital marketing and web design agencies out there. The first one is deciding like what is the scope and the depth of services that we're going to offer. I would not define my agency at all as what you'd consider like a boutique agency. Like we are not an agency that is doing a ton of very custom and what I refer to as snowflake type of work. We're the kind of agency that when you look at our line of services, they're well defined, they're packageable, they're bundled in a really clear way. And I think the best analogy I've come up with to explain it is like when you go to the dentist, right? There's basically two things they ask you to do when you leave, right? Number one, they say brush your teeth. Number two, they say floss. And if you do those two things, you can reasonably expect not to have any cavities or any kind of oral issues the next time we see you, right? So it's just like consistent care and maintenance of ourselves that actually gets us the results and keeps us healthy. Now, when it comes to business owners, many of them, as disgusting as it might sound, are not doing the equivalent of brushing their teeth and flossing, right? So what are those kind of things, right? So local business owners, if they were to make sure they had a website that properly talked about the services that they offered, and it was a clear pathway to contacting them and doing business with them, that would be something pretty basic, right? Having good reviews, right? Making sure that your online reputation helps you stand out. Most business owners are not paying attention to their online business profile. They're not paying attention to their Google business profile, right? Some of the very basic things that every business should be staying on top of and maintaining. When it comes to the search engines and people looking for them, like, are they showing up in their local area for the types of services that they should be ranking for? Are they running basic pay-per-click ads for those same keywords? When it comes to social advertising, are they doing some basic things like retargeting the people who landed on their website? Like, why wouldn't we retarget them, right? Are they doing email marketing, right? Are they sending emails out to their existing client database? Do they maintain that client database? Do they have a place where they keep all that customer data? And these are all very basic things. And when you look at them on their own, none of them are like this kind of flashy whiz bang stuff, but it's the stuff that, if done consistently, that most businesses can expect some type of result. And they need a business, they need an agency that's going to come to them and help them with those things, because they're not doing it themselves, right? They're not asking for reviews. They're not thinking about what to post on social. They're not thinking about all the different pieces that make up a good and healthy online footprint. And so that's kind of the piece that we've carved out for ourselves. And has there been times where someone needed more advanced work, or maybe has outgrown our agency that we've, topped out at a $2,500 or $3,000 a month contract, doing all the things that we can maybe do for them, and that they need to move on? That has happened, right? But by focusing in and not going so deep on the services, we've actually kind of carved out a way of being, a thing that we're known for around here, and it's made selling to those businesses a lot easier. The second way that we have kind of created a distinction in our agency that is kind of like niching down, but it hasn't forced us to choose a particular industry, is what's known as framework-based selling. So I studied under Russell Brunson for a number of years, joined his inner circle back in 2015, back in a time where nobody knew Russell, nobody knew ClickFunnels. It was before I had the opportunity to speak on stage 5 different times at Funnel Hacking Live, before we partnered with Russell on a couple of different projects. And he showed me the idea that when you can demonstrate what it is that you're trying to sell through a framework, right? Think of it this way. Your services have some sort of outcome, right? You're going to help somebody rank higher in Google. You're going to create a more professional website. You're going to help them get more reviews. When you show up to market talking about the services that you provide, you kind of look like everyone else. So what we did is we created something called the Customer Activity Roadmap, and it's a way of helping a client understand the logic and the order in which we make recommendations for a business owner. So for example, like we might start with their marketing foundation, that this is the thing that helps a business be really credible online. So a great website, reviews, Google business profile. They need to take care of that first. And once they take care of that, then we'll go after what we call active searchers. Active searchers are all the people that woke up this morning looking for the business. And doesn't it make sense that we would probably go after them first? And finally, there's what we call passive prospects, which is all the people that woke up this morning not looking for your business, but they are good candidates for that. And we would go after those folks with advertising and things like that. And so what we've done is we help our clients see the framework of which order we choose things, and then we actually evaluate their business and their digital footprint in each of the services that we can offer. And so by showing them this framework, one of the most common things we get in terms of feedback is, wow, nobody's ever explained this to us before like you have. Or they'll say something like, you guys were the most expensive by a long shot, and we're going to hire you guys because it's clear that you guys are the best. And the reason is not because like we're necessarily better at providing those services, but we are better at showing a client a framework and getting them to buy into that framework because their belief in that mechanism is what sets us apart. And none of our competitors can go out there and show that same type of approach, and they're not showing the same kind of mechanism. So this approach has really set us apart. So the framework is the niche, right? The scope and the depth of services is that niche. And I've proven over the years that this is all we've needed to stand out, to own our own backyard. And I can choose to work with certain industries. And we have. Our agency works with certain verticals. We have a huge number of veterinary practices in our collection of clients, right? But you wouldn't know that coming to our website, and you don't need to, because the people who are finding us through those channels, they're not needing us to show up in that way visibly. We have the connections and the relationships. So I want to say that if you're feeling pressure to pick a particular business, and before you go out and throw away your agency, something you've worked hard, maybe for years, and flush those relationships down the toilet because somebody's telling you to go pick a specific industry, before you do that, number one, make sure that you actually love who you're going to be working with and that you have a strong reason that you're picking that industry. Because I'll tell you, when it gets tough, when it gets hard, you have to love who you're working with, right? And second, before you decide to go all in on one particular line of business, consider shaping your agency in a way that lets you focus in on the depth of services or the range of services you offer, or maybe create a framework or borrow the framework that I've created and put that into your agency. So if this kind of thing is something that is speaking to you and you're thinking, gosh, I think I could see a pathway towards not picking a particular line of business and just owning my own backyard, that's the kind of stuff that's happening over in our Skool community. In the description, I have put a link to the Skool community. Jump on in there. Let's hang out. Let's talk about what's going on in your agency. And if you're looking for a little more hands-on help, a little one-on-one assistance, I've also put a link to the calendar in my description down below.